Okay. So today we were going to have a less technical discussion, I believe, and a more practical discussion about what this partnership could potentially look like. We have had some thoughts on it. Steve may still have some architectural questions and whatever concerns that we may have come up with, or concerns that you guys have come up with. So maybe we cover that for 10 minutes and see if there's answers, and then have a discussion about how our projects would work together in the open source community and what benefit we would bring to the community overall. So Steve, do you have anything, any follow-up questions that you need to ask, or Jay to us, or Andrew, or Alex, or any of you, or Jen?
The big thing on our side is just the timing of when you kind of foresee your spec proposal or the extensions being available, and which OCI registries do you expect to start implementing those first? Would it be like Quay or another open source project starting with that? That's kind of where I would like to start.
Andy, do you want to, let's see, I have been kind of leading this stuff, but Andy is really our open source face and leader for this. So we had planned at this meeting to make sure that he had the reins and I recede into the background.
Yeah, Jay's gonna go ahead and kind of step, back, play Homer Simpson and walk back into the weeds there. So be able to answer any questions, etc., moving forward. So especially, Tracy, if we're looking to schedule these, continue to schedule them, work through me from now on. So we can just let Jay manage the project, as they say.
Will do. Awesome. We can do that.
So at least from a registry standpoint, obviously, Red Hat, having our own registry product as well, we'd be looking to, implement this within Quay first, and then looking to use that as kind of a starting point to then show how it can be used and then promote it out to other registry distributions.
And what do you think the timing of that looks like?
Steve, any other questions that you had?
What's the timing look like that you think for going into Quay?
So now I'm going to turn that one back over to Jay, because he works more with the Red Hat product teams.
Actually, we don't have a handle on that yet. That's where we need to work more with Daniel to get a feel for that. So
okay,
yeah,
fair enough. And I believe, Jen, you said last time that you're getting close to publishing some of the spec changes that you're going to propose. And so I just kind of want to find where you're at on that front.
So we do have an open issue, and we had some discussions last week about our approach. I still don't have anything documentation wise, but I can, after this meeting, send out where it will be and the issue that you can keep an eye on.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
And then just from our side, I'm going through and updating our architecture and design with all of the schema objects that we're going to kind of need to be storing and retrieving and stuff like that, the information that we're going to try to grab. I'm going to try to get that done by the end of the week. It's just a little bit of work. So hopefully we'll have something here on our side to share with you with the information that we need to see if it lines up with your side of things. So that's those are the questions I had, Tracy and Jay, from my side.
And then, so I have some questions about internally. I don't know how you guys want to answer this. How is Emporous sitting with Red Hat? Is this something that you're getting some support from Red Hat? Is this, I mean, where is the project within Red Hat?
Let's see, there's a lot of grassroots support for it across the portfolio. And we should have an answer from the top though this month.
Okay. All right, that's fair enough.
And then I know this is, you know, the long term, there's going to be some changes to some of the package managers to have the package managers push things to OCI versus their, lack of a better word, native registries. Which package managers are you first going to look at tackling, and have you reached out to those folks yet?
That's actually been a topic recently, is like, how can we scope down to, you know, it can do so many things. We need to pick one thing, focus on it, and deliver on that, and keep going from there. So we haven't picked that yet, but we recognize that we need to do that, and we need to do that like in the next 2 weeks or so.
Okay. Are you guys leaning towards like a Node.js, or, you know, which ones do you think you're going to be targeting?
I don't know, because I'm not a decision maker there. I'm happy for anyone to go.
Yeah. Okay.
Andrew may happen to know more than I do with this on that question, but he may also be in the same boat.
I'm kind of in the same boat as well. So expect some updates soon once we get that determined from the team's perspective.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you're going to pick like a smaller library like Ruby, or if you're going to go for like a big one like Node, NPM, you know, or if you're going to do something in the middle. It'll be interesting to see what you guys pick.
And then just on a, so in terms of where you're moving to in getting it established as an open source project, I know initially in your doc you sent to me, your thoughts were to move it into the CNCF. Where are you at in that process? And would you consider moving it to something other than the CNCF?
We're still very early, so we have not started any conversations with the CNCF yet. However, we always kind of lean towards CNCF because it's, you know, a very well-known cloud native community. We are obviously always interested in hearing opinions from others for other destinations. So did you or the team have an idea of where you might want it to go if it didn't go to the CNCF?
So I've been on the board of both this Continuous Delivery Foundation, and I'm also on the board of the Open Source Security Foundation. I've worked pretty closely with the Linux Foundation now for the last 4 years. The problem I see with the CNCF, it's just so big. It really is. You can get lost in it. I believe that they now have something they call the sandbox. So it's easier to get into the CNCF. And in the past, you had to have at least 250 GitHub stars to even be considered. And it takes a lot to get to an incubating level. So there's just a lot of CNCF projects.
It's actually funny. I had a conversation earlier today about GitOpsCon. And how they have actually moved away from KubeCon and are moving towards CDCon and Open Source Summit, just because you get lost in the sea that is, you know, the pre-event to KubeCon.
Right. And, you know, just because, I mean, the CNCF is home to Kubernetes, and everybody just said, we're going to just be underneath Kubernetes. But the kind of solutions and tooling we're talking about is really more appropriate to the DevOps pipeline. It's really what we're having a conversation about.
And supply chain.
And supply chain, those two things. Now, the Open SSF really hasn't established a way to bring in open source projects, which is why Ortelius is under the Continuous Delivery Foundation, even though Deploy Hub is a member of the Open SSF. So we're straddling two worlds there. If the Open SSF had an open source way to bring in open source projects, we may consider bringing it into the Open SSF, because we are really focused so much around SBOMs and the collection of security and DevOps intelligence. But the CDF is really the most appropriate home for us. So I would say looking at bringing it into the CDF would be better for you than the CNCF. Now, that being said, your repository would need a whole lot of work to get that done. Alex, yeah, you had a question?
Oh, it was just whenever it was whenever you were
It's good now. Go
Okay.
for it.
I was just going to throw a kind of a curveball in there, because as we were developing the Emporous concept over the past year or so, we've looked at like what is Emporous and you know what are different use cases and things like that, and another open source foundation that I had found that I thought maybe would be a good fit also was the Hyperledger Foundation. And I know that might sound kind of strange on the surface, but when you look at like the distribution and kind of like what Emporous brings to the table, I think there might be some applicability under the Hyperledger Foundation as well.
And we do, and just, you know, I don't think we've ever spoken to you about this, but we are doing a project with XRP Ledger. We got a grant to look at building an immutable SBOM ledger that we're currently working on. And so I get that, totally do. But I believe that that your people, I like to call your peeps, you'll find them in the CDF more so than any Hyperledger open source or the CNCF. Now, there's the other option is you could become pretty quickly, you could become a sub-project of Ortelius and already have the open source community behind you, and we could build it that way, and potentially our community then would help build the back end to it. So there are ways to get in fast. I do think that the CDF would look at you pretty closely, but I think that they would be looking at your community and have some concerns about the size of your existing community. So they're just challenges in getting recognized. And the reason why we would ask that question is because for Ortelius, in order for us to start using your back end, we would need you to be already accepted as an open source community somewhere, because we certainly wouldn't want to build something that ended up being proprietary. So that's one kind of, for us to adopt it would be one hurdle we'd have to get over. And it wouldn't matter to us what open source community you were in. We would love for you to be either in the CDF, so that we were at least sister projects. So the CDF is overseeing both us and Emporous.
You know, these are all great areas of topic that our team has to go and contemplate which one makes the most sense for us. So, you know, we're going to take that to heart, weigh in the different options, the pros, the cons, and then see where we are going to, you know, reside.
And if you became a sub-project of Ortelius and later wanted to become a full-on project of your own, that's certainly doable as well. You would still just create an Emporous repository as you have it, and we would consider it a sub-project of Ortelius until you were able to get in, have the community base to get yourself at a level that the CDF would say, hey, this is a real open source project. It's not just Red Hat behind it. That being said, there are other projects out there that have small communities that are contributing, like Shipwright. So, one company's behind it, and they have a few open source developers in the community that's also working on it. So that's just an area that you'll definitely have to overcome. And then, as a joint solution, what would be our go-to-market story? What does that go-to-market story look like? I think that from the Ortelius side, we have some ideas of what that would look like. But what are your thoughts? And what are the features of Ortelius that are important to you?
Can I jump in on this one, Andrew?
Go for it. Go, please.
So we've said, sorry, I have you on my phone too, so I apologize for the no video here. One of the things that we had that looking at Ortelius that was of interest to me was and I think I'd made the statement in the meeting the last meeting I was in with you guys, that Emporous, if we take the schema or schemas, or maybe a more encapsulating term is ontology, that Ortelius is using and register that with in Emporous, then I think that Emporous becomes, on some levels, becomes Ortelius, and then you get the distribution and some of the advantages that we see in Emporous there. So I think that one of the most interesting parts of Ortelius to me is the schema or overall ontology there, and then I see a potential go to market being that integration using Emporous as the distribution mechanism for Ortelius.
Mm-hmm.
Your UI, you have one.
Right. I know. We have a UI. We don't have a good backend to track a whole bunch of data. And that's why we're looking, we did get that grant from XRP. We got a $75,000 grant to take a look at using their blockchain to track that level of data, which we're playing with right now. That doesn't mean we'll go with it. It just means that we've started a POC, because if you look at, we were just on a TOC meeting, and one of the board advisors asked us about that. You know, why would you want to go to a kind of a blockchain architecture? And when we explain the amount of data that we're talking about and the cost of managing that data, and you know, the blockchain is ledger technology really cuts that into a fraction. We're talking about cents instead of thousands of dollars. That is one of our bigger challenges in managing all that SBOM information. It's a massive data. It's huge.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's crazy, right? I mean, you think about financial transactions, it's a lot of data, but each transaction isn't a lot of data. You just have a lot of transactions.
Mm-hmm.
In SBOMs, we probably have fewer transactions than you would in a bank in a single day, but the data that you're tracking is volumes. It's not one, you know, it's not just reconciling a merchant to a customer. It's a lot of data. So that's the problem we are trying to solve. So certainly your backend database is an interest to us to do that. And the relationship for us, you know, we're small. Ortelius is small. Deploy Hub is small. To have Red Hat as part of the community and working together on solving this problem would be huge for us. I'm not going to lie. It would be huge for us. So we like the idea of having Red Hat help us solve this problem.
And
Any other thoughts on go to market?
Yeah, there's a lot that we, as Jay mentioned earlier, our go-to-market strategy, especially after our conversation we had last week or 2 weeks ago, the days are merging together, is we need to be more succinct in our messaging and what we're focusing on instead of trying to boil the ocean. And that's what we've been working on as a team, to what that will look like, because otherwise we have no go-to-market strategy, or a very fractured one. So that's what we're currently working on, is our go-to-market strategy and being able to promote that out so that others can see the value that is part of our ecosystem.
Right. And I think the part of the challenge is building out those cooperative integrations, I guess you could say, with all the different package managers. Because we know from experience that you have to play with people where they're at. It's hard to get them to come to you. You have to go to them. And we have been spending quite a bit of time just building integrations and pointing to data and bringing it over, as opposed to creating the data ourselves. And there is a bit of a difference between your strategy and ours in some of those areas, even though I know that in your original kind of what you want to do now, you do want to point to the data, which we already have. So we've already done that, a lot of that work for you. So that it feels like it's a right fit. It really does. I think that the biggest concern we have is to make sure you're going to be part of an open source community before we jump in, head first and go for it.
Yeah, totally agree. It's something that our team is taking to heart, everything we're hearing from you in your community, and we are going to be, and it's one of the things that we're also doing is just kind of just leveling up our community outreach. So we're finishing a rebrand of Emporous from Universal Reference. That should be done in the next couple days, we're hoping, and then being able to talk about how we can better promote and work with the community to hear more feedback.
It's hard. Community building is one of the hardest jobs I've ever done. To build the Ortelius community, I literally spent a solid year, happened to be during a pandemic, so it was a good time to do it. Reaching out to certain profiles on LinkedIn, people that from around the world. I mean, Sasha's on the call today, and he's from South Africa, and I met him because I saw his profile and said, this looks like the kind of person that we'd love to have on our open source community. And I literally reached out to probably over 1,000 people in the course of a year to build those 250 plus members that we have. And out of that, we have about 50 people who are actually contributing. I think we have about 115 different GitHub forks. So there's people out there working on stuff, but it's a huge lift. It's harder to build a community than the product.
I know, it's so difficult.
It's very difficult. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of open source projects for people to get involved in. And you have to find the individuals who are interested in solving this particular problem. People who really want to work on this particular problem. And that's how I went about doing it. I looked at a lot of LinkedIn profiles, did some automation to say, hey, this is what we're doing. Would you be interested? And I talked to a lot of people over the course of a year. A lot. I would have sometimes 6 calls in a day. One just lined up one after the other, 15, 30-minute calls to explain what we're doing. I would be so hoarse at the end of the day, I couldn't talk.
I know.
It's hard. It's hard, but you're Red Hat. It may be a little easier, but I do still think that bringing Red Hat into either the CDF or under the Ortelius project is the fastest way to get you up and running as an open source project so that we can have some serious conversation about doing this integration.
Cool. I mean,
so I think the challenge would be is if just find out if upper management is going to give you guys the thumbs up to continue with this. And if that happens, how we can help you get to an open source status.
Yep. And by the time we get to our next call next week, we should hopefully have a little more insights on, our go-to-market strategy, but also our community building, for sure.
And if you guys get the thumbs up, Andy, I'm so happy to work with you on building out that go-to-market message. Our messages are pretty close anyway, so we could put together a pretty interesting, Ortelius with an Emporous story, yeah, registry or however we want to describe it, because I hate to use some of the older terms. I think that when you were using the universal object reference is a good term. I don't think we should throw it away. I think it clarifies what you're trying to do, but we certainly could put together an interesting story.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to throw away where we came from, but we want to obviously, as we've been highlighting throughout this entire discussion, we want to make it clear to what our messaging is going to be and our value add.
Right.
I just wanted to say thank you for your shout out to the name, because that was a hotly contested name. So thank you.
Well, it's more of a what than a name, right? But sometimes having the what is so important. We struggle sometimes with our what. You know, we don't have something that in 3 words can describe what we're doing. I try to call us an evidence store. But I think a universal object reference is a good way to describe the what of what Emporous is doing. So it's hard. All this stuff is really hard. Messaging is hard. Building the community is hard. I think we'd all love to just go back in our corners and code with our headphones on and not worry about the rest of the stuff.
Exactly.
I know that's true. I know that's true. But I think we could have a good time working together, and I think we could make some good progress. And it would be, I think the go-to-market story we could build up pretty strong. And I do believe that our open source community would be excited to have Red Hat, working with Red Hat would help our own community.
Yes, absolutely, definitely. So glad to see Andrew is here. So Andrew, how are you?
Oh, hey, I didn't even know that you were here. How you doing, man?
Yeah, so we know each other for a very long time. It's
Yep.
very, very wonderful to see you here. I think we spent a lot of great time together.
We did.
So everybody, Sim is our committee of our outreach group. So he runs our outreach. He does a lot of podcasts and coordinates all of everybody's who's presenting where. Are we getting coverage in the right places? So I know Sim would be totally excited to be able to have something to talk about in outreach, that we were doing work with Red Hat.
Yes, definitely, absolutely. I was glad to see Andrew, because Andrew and me actually we know each other for a very long time for some of the CNCF community side. So Andrew, we should do some podcasts, because I'm looking forward to our guest for this year as well.
I'm looking forward to it, regardless of what the topic is, definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
And for that matter, any of you on the call, if you want to, talk about what you're doing with Emporous, Sim's the man to reach out to. And I actually manage the CDF online meetup, so we can talk about it there as well. So we have a lot of avenues.
That's what I was just going to say. Same thing, exactly.
Yeah, and and the CD Foundation has something that they call the pipeline at devops.com that they do on a regular basis. These are all you get so much more love when you're part of the CDF than you would be the CNCF.
I have
You get a lot more love because they have fewer projects to love, right?
Exactly. I've presented to the devops.com previously. It's been a while, but it was a long time ago.
Well,
Yeah.
Tracy does TechStrong TV for devops.com.
Yeah, I'm a host for the TechStrong TV Women,
Nice.
which has been a really fun project to do.
Cool.
So Jen, you're going to get signed up here. Be careful.
She definitely will.
I'm ready.
Good. There's so few of us that it's in technology, and even fewer in open source. It's really sad, the amount of women in open source. It's pathetic, actually.
So what are going to be it sounds like you guys have a couple weeks of stuff to work through. So should we just do the next meeting in 2 weeks, you think, or should we go out to 3?
I think we should wait until they hear if they're going to get a thumbs up from upper management.
Yeah, so what I'll do is, Tracy, I'll work with you to work on the
Okay.
timing. You and I will just collaborate in general, just on the whole community outreach, collaboration between our groups. And then when time is appropriate, we can get everyone back together just so we can have productive conversations. How does that sound?
Sounds great. I think that makes sense. It does, because we would want to know that the project is getting upper management support, and they're okay with pushing it out to an open source community, and then we'll just have to figure out that part.
Perfect.
All right, all, then we will chat in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, I know that Steve is still going to have his head into what you're doing, and looking at what you're doing compared to what we're doing with the XRP Ledger blockchain. And see if we have to create 2 streams, or if it's potential that we would just choose Emporous over XRP. And if we can bring that code over. So we have some work on our side to do as well.
Fantastic.
And Andy, we used to live in Chicago. We lived in
Ah.
Chicago for long. Steve's from Chicago. And we do go there go there to visit family on somewhat regular basis. If we're out there, we'll have to meet you at Sheffield's or something.
Well, unfortunately, I'm never in Chicago. I'm actually in London right now. So
You are?
Yep.
Well,
I'm a traveling nomad, literally.
well, enjoy.
Will do. All right. Great
All right.
talking to everyone. See you in a few weeks. Tracy, I'll be in touch with you.
Yes, thank you.
Cheers.
All right, bye-bye.